Good morning, and thank you, Council President Cale Smith, Finance Chairman Lavelle, and all members of City Council. It's my honor to remind you that 2020 is almost over. Do you remember how things were when I presented the budget last year? We are still rebounding strongly from Act 47 oversight. Our workers were finally getting long overdue raises. We had $120 million in our fund balance, and after years of hard work and discipline by my administration and you, City Council, our financial picture was good. Then the global pandemic happened, as did our reckoning with the systemic racism long experienced by Black and brown members of our community. Neither of these world-shattering challenges is resolved, and we continue to face them. Still, we responded as Pittsburghers always do. We made tough decisions to stop public events, close pools, senior centers, and rec centers, but still watched as our coworkers and neighbors lost their livelihoods and too often their lives. Our tax revenues cratered, and there is still no clear path forward to replace them. We listened to the pain expressed by neighbors who have been threatened by exclusionary and inequitable systems for generations. And we proudly declared together that Black Lives Matter. It has been one crisis after another these past 7 years. Affordable housing, Act 47, spikes in violent crime, historic landslides, sinkholes, and damaged infrastructure due to unprecedented rainfall from climate change, lead in our water system, the Tree of Life massacre, racial disparities, and now the global pandemic. Our vulnerabilities were exposed but taken head on. Here in Pittsburgh, we saw resilience in neighbors helping neighbors and taking care of one another. We saw the bravery of our frontline workers, refuse and recycling workers, medics, firefighters, police officers, bus drivers, healthcare workers, grocery store workers who risked their own health to ensure Pittsburghers had what they needed. We froze hiring. We avoided layoffs, and we provided continuous city operations despite our socially distanced and masked world. We lost 5 city workers to deaths this year, and COVID-19 took the lives of more than 1.2 million people in the United States. We're currently in the 3rd wave, with more than 1 million cases in the last 10 days alone. I will pause now for a moment of reflection in their memory. After COVID-19 hit in March, the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor came to the forefront in the spring. Our streets have been filled with protests and marches ever since. We continue to wrestle with these issues, and I acknowledge that we as a city government have made some mistakes, which I strongly believe we have learned from. My sincere thanks goes to the recommendations made by the Community Task Force for Police Reform, which we are working to implement. Despite all of this, we kept our resolve. During one of the most difficult years in American history, I'm here to tell you that with your help and that of Pittsburgh's residents, we're going to have to do it all over again in 2021. But it is my hope that we will emerge from next year even stronger. The $590 million operating budget that I am proposing today does not include tax increases and works to avoid layoffs and furloughs of personnel for as long as possible. The financial responsibility we showed together the last 7 years by building up the $120 million fund balance we had at the start of this year has helped us to avoid pain so far. But now, the cupboard is bare. As both Republican and Democratic mayors nationwide have urged, with the support of economists and Wall Street, it is absolutely necessary for Congress to provide cities on the front lines of this pandemic with economic relief. In the meantime, we are doing our part to implement cuts across all city departments, and non-union employees will not receive cost of living adjustments to their pay in 2021. The vast majority of vacant positions are also being eliminated from the 2021 budget citywide starting January 1. It should never have to come to this, and it breaks my heart to say, but if we do not get aid from Washington, it will require the city to make $25.6 million in additional personnel cuts starting July 1, which is approximately the jobs of 634 city employees. This will be the most difficult budget City Council has faced since 2003, when it used revenues that didn't exist and fake spending projections to pass a plan that looked balanced, but instead took us to the brink of bankruptcy. We cannot repeat those mistakes again this year, just to avoid making hard decisions. I am confident with the steady leadership of Council President Cale Smith, President Pro Tem Burgess, and Finance Chair Lavelle, we will get through this responsibly. During the year, we will additionally work with mayors across Pennsylvania to push the legislature to reform our outdated tax structure and give municipalities greater power to tax progressively and thoughtfully and tailor their budgets to their needs. More than ever, we will need our nonprofit partners to fund initiatives to move Pittsburgh forward, and for the legislature to reform the state's nonprofit tax structure. Just as we have worked together to enact meaningful, new, proactive policies and programs to lessen the effects of social disparity, we must do the same when examining options of how we finance our city. For the past 5 years, we have built a resiliency lens into all of our decision-making. This filter is guided by the principle of P4, people, planet, place, and performance. As our gender equity report has proven, both gender and racial disparity is real in Pittsburgh. We must place this same lens over the way the state allows us to collect revenue. As you know, in Pennsylvania, taxes are regulated and are authorized by state government, not local government. During this crisis, we have witnessed firsthand that our present revenue is not only unsustainable, but is equally inequitable. Furthermore, it does not represent the economic reality nor the present demographics of Pittsburgh today. To be certain, we cannot build a vibrant city for all until all are part of providing the needed resources, fairly, equally, together. In addition to this horrible year for our economy and our public health, we faced a reckoning with the racial and economic disparities impacting many of our neighbors. My proposed budget includes shifting some funding and responsibilities from the Pittsburgh Police to the new Health, Safety, and Violence Prevention Initiative, which will house both the Office of Community Health and Safety and the Office of Community Services and Violence Prevention. This will allow police to focus on their core function of keeping neighborhoods safe from crime, and it will mean full-time funding for public safety's Group Violence Intervention Program for the very first time. We are not defunding the police, but are reinvesting in our communities. Due to hard work from Budget Director Kevin Paulus, Finance Director Douglas Anderson, and the entire OMB and finance staffs, the 2021 budget will still invest in city facilities and infrastructure to keep our recovery going, and quality of life in place with a commitment to equity for all. Government cannot just stop working, so we will push forward with the improvements residents deserve. Put a different way, this budget represents a city that works. While the federal government may have failed us in 2020, the Pittsburgh of 2021 and beyond is one that will not let its residents down. 311 is logging and responding to calls. DPW is improving your playgrounds and using smart technology to improve snow removal. DOME is improving sidewalks, streets, and handicap ramps. And building permits for PLI and planning have finally moved online. This year, we upgraded 21 courts, upgraded 35 parks, upgraded 7 playgrounds, received $1.5 million in grants for parks, senior centers, and rec centers. And next year, the city will invest a total of $125 million into capital projects, including park investments at Deer Pit, Bud Hammer, Enright, Arsenal, Emerald View, Sheridan, and Kennard. Strip District rail banking in the Allegheny Green Boulevard, funding for the Warrington, Jefferson, Robert E. Williams rec centers, as well as the Brighton Heights Senior Center, a new spray park in Chartier City, continued record funding for landslide repairs, including El Paso Street, Riverview Park, and Parkwood Road, funding for EMS diesel exhaust systems, Fire Station 19 and Stevens School improvements, $4 million for the first phase of turning all of our street lights to LEDs. We'll also be spending $17 million to repave 65 miles of streets. Services like these are the meat and potatoes of government. In Pittsburgh, we're also digging deep to give you something more. This is a time nationally where we are having critical and important but hard conversations about what some of our most vulnerable communities need. This includes Black and brown communities, immigrant and refugee communities, veterans, LGBTQIA+ communities, those experiencing housing instability, and those suffering from addiction and mental health issues. In Pittsburgh, we are continuing to prioritize equity, which means we are building up communities that haven't always had the same opportunities, access, or protection. Through the leadership of officials, including Chief Equity Officer Majestic Lane, Assistant Chief of Staff Lindsay Powell, and many others across the city and its affiliated agencies, we have committed more than $10 million to the URA next year, double the funding of this year, to invest in affordable housing, avenues of hope, and an equitable recovery plan from COVID-19, in addition to the annual $10 million for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We've leveraged more than $67 million in additional housing aid, helped Pittsburghers purchase their first homes, added additional affordable rental units, and helped longtime homeowners stay in their homes and communities. We approved paid sick leave, which will go into full effect starting January 1st. We received a record level of 9% low-income tax credits for additional affordable housing. We implemented a guaranteed basic income pilot to help those living in poverty with direct payments planned for early 2021 in conjunction with the One PGH investment strategy. We've adopted the Avenues of Hope initiative with the URA and Councilman Burgess and Lavelle to invest in 7 historically diverse business districts. We've adopted the GARE Racial Equity Toolkit in training to ensure that budget decisions at the department level are made through an equity lens. and we approved $23 million in contracts to minority and women-owned businesses. We've adopted financial empowerment centers that have helped 557 people save almost a third of $1 million. We created the LGBTQIA Commission, the Gender Equity Commission, and soon a Racial Equity Commission. We've adopted an award-winning Rec-to-Tech program with city parks, distributed 46,000 free books to 4,000 children through the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Equity extends to our response to COVID as well. Work included city parks, making sure that our most vulnerable neighbors, youth and older adults, had access to meals in the first 10 days, served over 2,000 meals, and over 250,000 meals have been served in total now. Small business grants from the URA and temporary outdoor dining streeteries were permits given to 68 restaurants from DOMI, issuing more than $12 million in federal funds to organizations supporting residents, including the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, the Women's Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh, and Casa San Jose. Translating emergency materials and welcoming Pittsburgh's Quiet Care campaign for newcomers, adopting a cash assistance program that helped distribute $500,000 in private national philanthropic funding to residents who were not eligible for federal stimulus because of their immigration status, and providing nearly 900 people with rental and mortgage assistance through the URA. We also kept our eyes on the long-term stability of our planet. Through the leadership of Chief Sustainability Officer Grant Irvin, Chief Resiliency Planner Rebecca Kiernan, and their team, we have joined a global network to implement sustainable public procurement policies, adopted a net zero building policy, became only the second U.S. city to adopt the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and joined with our brothers and sisters from 11 other cities worldwide to divest from fossil fuels. Further, through the leadership of a new PWSA board, Director Will Pickering and Deputy Executive Director Jennifer Pursuti, PWSA has aggressively tackled the lead levels in our water, replacing 8,000 public lead lines and 5,000 private lines, and this year pushed lead levels to over 20-year lows below federal warning levels. PWSA also announced plans for an innovative citywide green infrastructure stormwater management initiative to further protect our water. Finally, Pittsburgh just played a major role in the historic presidential election, placing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris into the White House. The incoming administration has made commitments to providing financial assistance to cities and investments to infrastructure. We need this funding to come in the first quarter of the year to allow us to present a full 2021 budget that does not include 634 job losses. We have a lot to be proud of, but so much more to do. Here's to the end of 2020 and working together in 2021 to build a pathway back to better days for all. Thank you, Council President and City Council. We look forward to working with you together to build a better Pittsburgh for all.